Dr. Rubin, you have to sit down. Sorry. All right. Hello, everybody. First off, I just have to say as a newbie here that it is amazing to see all the energy that you all have created here and outside to watch everybody reconnecting many after many years, and some of us connecting for the first time. So that would certainly be in my case. So my name's Karen Stanley, and I wanted to welcome you all here, and thank you for making the time to be here today for this special historic event. Our legendary Brooke Tauzer and his delightful companion, Alicia. And our media services and Tauzer lecture support wizard, Russ Bowden. And collectively, the most phenomenal group of people sitting here the past Tauzer lectures. So thank you all for being here. So originally, there was only one person that wasn't going to be able to make it here, and now it's two. I think most of you know Ron Smith was finally located in southern Utah, and he was not able to be here today, but we did get his life-size photo, not life-size, body shot photo, and it will be photoshopped in by the wizard. And then unfortunately Scott Fuller emailed me last night and said he was not feeling well, so he was unable to make it, but he wanted me to send, of course, his regards, and we'll work on getting his photo as well to get that in the picture. So and I also wanted to just give a special thanks to some folks that helped create and coordinate this. So Russ, getting this whole photo thing together, thank you, Russ. And Mary Pierce and Diane Smith, thank you for all you did to help with this. And John Martin for helping locate Ron Smith and getting his photo for me. And Galen, whose idea it was to do the photo in the first place. So the brilliant mind, of course. So thank all of you for your help doing that. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So we decided to get the program going now, even though I know you're being served now, just because I realize people have things to do and places to go, so we want to be timely about that. So we are going to begin with a brief history of the Tauzer lecture, and from talking to some people, I noticed that people had different versions of the history and the origin and all that, so I thought it would be appropriate. So we have our part of our history, one of the historians here for the Tauzer lectures, Diane Smith, is going to give a little history of the Tauzer lecture. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. It's always fun to get to give the history, because then it gets recorded on film or whatever, and people think you really know what you know, because that's all they ever hear anymore. And I want to first of all set the record straight. Brooke Tauzer, not Tauzer. And it's been years, and I don't think I succeeded very often saying your name right, but today I wanted to go on record. Hello, Mr. Tauzer. And I want to say just a few things. Who do you think started this lecture? Who would you point at? Bob Rubin. How many people vote Bob Rubin? See there? Your reputation is such. But I conferred with Bob, and I'm here to assure you he will not take the credit. He says Pete Levesque had a really great idea, and he spoke to Ed Buckley, and Ed Buckley said, that's a really great idea, and then Ed Buckley chose Bob. And because Bob Blanchard had started this instructional day and we had that kind of time, it all fell together into that process that we know oh so well. How many of you were hired by SRJC when Brooke Tauzer was Dean of Instruction? Right. Look at that. Now, how many of you never really had an interview with a committee? Brooke and Charlie Belden, his good sidekick, would sit you down and talk to you and read a little paper and say, great, I think you'll do fine. Can you imagine that in these days? And the Tauzer lecture process began as the keynote faculty speaker. And isn't that a drag of a name? And the Senate duly made a little plaque, and there were 6, 7, 8 of us who were listed up in this little plaque that said faculty keynote lecture. And Brooke had retired in '88, and I'd gotten involved in policy writing and stuff. And I realized, dang, they keep naming all those buildings after board members. You weren't allowed anymore. Long ago you could. You couldn't name a building after anybody that wasn't a board member. So, in kind of throwing it around, I said, well, what a good idea. Let's name our lecture. Let's bring him back home for us to claim that title. And as I was saying to some friends, oh, I'm going to this lunch where all the people who ever gave a Tauzer lecture, da-da-da-da-da. It was too long, again. It wasn't a good way to refer to it. So I'm now referring to all of you as Tauzerians. You are the Tauzerians of Santa Rosa Junior College, and in the next 100 years, everybody can remember the moment that was coined. I want to say just there's only one of us missing from the face of the earth, and hats off and a salute to Jerry Waxman, the great leader who pioneered Newman lecturing. And I want to paint the picture a little bit. I talked to Ben and I talked to Bob, and I got some good images of those days. This particular experience was born in a time that doesn't exist anymore. There was no email on campus. And we all walked over to Bailey Hall to get our mail. Remember that? And if we needed something, we walked down the hall over to the next building, and there was an interpersonal business that we loved. I loved, because you could get tired of being at your desk and you could go outside and find somebody. Well, in that wonderful interpersonal mix was Brooke Tauzer, because if you did something well, you gave a nice talk, or you showed up at a committee meeting and said all your committee mates right, you would get the famous yellow note. How many of you got a yellow note from Brooke? Now, for you newcomers, you don't know what that's like. It's just a piece of yellow tablet, folded over once, and then in his big, broad, beautiful handwriting, he'd say, "Good job. You took care of the problem," or whatever it was. He also was the source of incredible stories, everything from how Stanford almost came to build their campus here to, you know when somebody lives in Sebastopol because their visors always flop on the driver's side because they're driving into the JC facing the sunrise and home facing the sunset. He noticed small things and turned them into charming stories for us. But as Ben mentioned to me a couple of nights ago, one of the reasons the Tauzer Lecture was such a wonderful title for us to have is because Brooke's one of us. He got a graduate degree in an actual field, history. He taught. He knows the classroom. It's not a mail order, whatever, that some people have. And he understood the classroom. He understood things, and he set the bar so high for himself. He set the bar high for himself, and being around him, ever polite, ever genial, but always clear when he had to be. And that bar being set high meant that what we were doing was going to be important because we got to borrow your good name. And through the years, I know that all of us experienced that weight. Oh, how many more weeks? How many more days? Is it going to be too long? Is it going to be too short? And some of us, we did our ordinary things, but, we had a bobsled on the stage, and I think Peggy had somebody go into labor on the stage, and everybody had to, take care of this person in labor, and no one forgets PJ's double pine whatever trees out in front of this house, bad examples of landscaping. So we've also had fun in your name, Brooke. And it's been just a wonderful time. I hope that the Tauzerians and the tradition carries on because the world is different. It moves a little too fast. Brooke took the time to notice, I know from the brief flicker of a second when I was a dean, he would call faculty who were sick, seriously sick, and he would visit faculty even if they were just not nice people. He would go and see to it that they were okay or how they were and so on. He was a whole man. He was a gentleman. And may the JC someday see half the man you have been for us. And may that inspiration carry on. But meanwhile, the Tauzer Lecture is as simple as that. It's an honor. It's now got a nice little machine where former Tauzer lecturers pick the new one. And I'm glad to see it always involved from the first couple in diversity. Different departments, different people, men and women, things that led to a certificate, things that led to a transfer degree. It's a wonderful system, and I know we're all really proud that we get to carry your name, and we are your Tauzerians.
Thank you for the enlightenment. Diane, thank you. So I forgot to mention just Janet and Tiffany, who are here from PR. First off, thank you for being here. And Janet has been kind enough to help us. I know we all have Tauzerian voices, so you don't need a mic. But they would need it because they're recording this and it's going to pick up the sound better. So Janet's going to be running the mic around to whoever is speaking. So as I said in my email, what we thought would be a nice way to introduce ourselves is in chronological order. And I thought that would paint a nice picture, certainly for Brooke, but for all of us, kind of looking at that chronology starting way back with Bob Rubin. So we're going to try to keep timely if we can. I've asked Diane and Mary to be so kind as to be my little timekeepers with my Buddha Incan bell. So if you do hear this, it means wrap it up. You can give an example. Isn't that nice? So in that 1 minute, what we'd like you to do, if you would, please, is to say your name, what department you're from or were from, the year and title of your Tauzer. If you forgot the year, I have a cheat here if you need help. And then if you have some words that you would like to share with Brooke. So without further ado, we are going to turn it over. Bob, you don't get to take a bite just yet because you're on, sorry, with Dr. Rubin.
Thank you, you guys. It's really nice to be here, and I'm a little bit in awe of the quality of folks that I see in this room. Good friends, old friends, people that made such a difference at Santa Rosa Junior College, and I'm just proud to be part of it. And Kara, thank you. Thank you for doing this. This is really sweet. It's so sweet I can hardly stand it. And I'm really happy to be here because it is sweet as well as interesting as hell. I was the first one. When was I the first one, Kara?
87.
When?
87.
87. I was the first one of these in 1987, and I gave a talk in biology. I'm a biologist, and the title of the talk was something like The Natural History of Elephant Seals in the North Pacific or something, and I'd been working on elephant seals, which are big, fat, kind of cute, but very fat and strange animals. And I was working with a guy who, at the time, was kind of the world authority on these things. He's at Santa Cruz, and he is now a member of the National Academy of Sciences, a couple hundred publications, that sort of thing. And I mentioned him one time to Brooke when I was doing this. I said, well, I'm working with this guy, Bernie LeBoeuf, and so on. Bernie LeBoeuf, Brooke says. Oh, yes, fine young man. History, 17A, third seat from the left. Got a C. And I told that story to Bernie, and he just thought it was the funniest thing he could. And I didn't know at that time that he'd even been involved in any part of Santa Rosa Junior College or even this part of the world. For those of you that haven't received notes on yellow line paper, I'm sorry. I have all of mine, and I treasure them. We could talk about this forever. I need to drink more. But they were the most wonderful things. And I will say that also, Brooke never asked, I can't speak for other people, but he never asked me to come to his office. If he wanted to talk to me, he came to mine. And I had a small mouse in my office that lived in a cage in a little jar. It was a desert mouse. His name was John Jacoby. And I love John Jacoby dearly. I named him after a great rugby player that I played with and I really admired. And Brooke came to know John. And it seemed like every time Brooke would come, John would come out of the bottle and stir around a little bit. And Brooke would chat him up and then ask me whatever he wanted. I think maybe he came more for John than me, but it doesn't matter. And then John died, and Brooke sent me a Snickers bar through the faculty mail and a little note of remorse. And I'll remember that forever. I'll tell you two other quick stories. Once a student came to Brooke to complain about how difficult my class was. And he told Brooke, this is the hardest course I've ever taken. And Brooke told him, young man, by definition, one will be. And I always kind of liked that, and it was a good thing. And then many of you remember walking into Brooke's office, and there would be this big desk, and everything was lined up beautifully in sequence. All these files, and nothing else on the desk except a pen and pencil, perhaps. And I walked in one day, and I said, "Mr. Tauzer, it has always been a great hope of mine that I would someday be as organized as you are." And he said, "Dr. Rubin, you are far too bright a young man to confuse organization with neatness." So there are a million Brooke stories, and those are the best ones that I can recall really quickly. But if you weren't here then, you missed it. But you're here now, and we may never see another one like him. It's great to have you here, Brooke, and Alicia as well, who I can tell you stories about also.
I'm Benjamin Benson. I'm an anthropologist, and that's what my talk was about, was anthropology. And that talk was in what year? I think Charlemagne was marching north when I gave that. When I came to SRJC, it was a time of growth and development. We were building a museum and building a museum collection, and we were building anthropology, and we were trying to keep ethnic studies alive and trying to keep Native American studies alive specifically. And so Brooke and I had a lot of time to interact with each other about what we were going to do about the Native American communities and their involvement in our facility, and what we were going to do about our department and how we were going to integrate Native American studies as best we could. When I look back on those years and I look back at my experiences with Brooke, the thing that I like so much that stays in my mind so clearly is that when you ask Brooke a question, what you got was the truth. And if that hurt a little bit, if you were disappointed, well, too bad. It was the truth. That's the way it is. And that, for me, helped me establish a level of trust in our administration at that time. I felt that I could count on what was going to come out of that office. And that truth, and the combination of that and the fact that he set the bar so high for all of us, for those things I am eternally grateful. And I will remember my years at SRJC with great fondness because of the way we started it off together. Thank you, Brooke. Wonderful experience for me. Thank you.
So we're going to go out of order for just one person. I know PJ, you're next, but Melissa has to go at one if you don't mind. Thank you so much.
My name is Melissa Sucourt, and I know that because whenever I ran into Brooke on campus, he would always say, "Hello, Melissa Sue," and he loved that. This was a special thing between us, but my favorite part of Brooke's tenure was the mythical Brooke's drawer. I don't know if anybody ever saw Brooke's drawer, but the story was afloat that Brooke had this drawer. And if you went in and you asked and you prepared yourself to ask him, well, for a new project, or you needed a speaker, there wasn't funds in your department budget, something special was going on, and Brooke approved of it, you didn't have to do any paperwork. Brooke had this drawer that he could reach into and make sure that you had support for that. And I was pretty young when I first came here. I was about 15, 20 years younger than anybody else in my department. And all around me were people saying no. And Brooke was always saying yes. And I learned for the rest of my career to ask, that there would be somebody somewhere who could say yes. And I attribute that to Brooke. My talk was in 2002, and it was out of my PhD dissertation. The topic was Charles Dickens, MTV, and me. See, he would have wanted to fund that one.
Good afternoon, PJ Lococo, then Kutlik, if you want to be correct. And this was March, I had to look at my plaque, March 1989. I'd been here 7 years. I was a new department chair. That's how rough our department was. Show up for a couple of years and all of a sudden you're chair. But I do remember back when I was hired in I had an interview just with Brooke. I mean, Charlie Belden was my dean, and we'd go in and sit and just chat about anything with Michelson when we were hired. But the thing I most remember about Brooke is being at graduation. And every time I go and I sit there and I get chills up and down my spine, I still expect to hear his voice reading off the graduate names. Nothing bad to say about the people who are doing it now, but Brooke had a way. Brooke would come by your office. In the 80s, Bob and I would talk in my office and come to tears, and it was passion back then. He'd come, he'd care, and it was really special because we knew he came from Bailey Hall, Bailey Hall. But it was really nice. I kind of fell into the third slot. How you follow these guys? I mean, you're talking Benson and Rubin. How do you follow that? They were looking for a vocational educator, vocational department, and they were looking for a woman. Well, there weren't too many of those around here in the 80s, but I was lucky enough to be here, and I loved it. I know people to this day talk about my 2 Italian Cypress that I took at a ranch house picture. And back then, thank you, Russ, the technology was slides from behind the screen. I mean, that was a big deal. I mean, there was no projector in the front. So, and then we snuck in little things like I did my whole lecture seated at a patio table with a jug of iced tea next to me. And I kept looking down at this planter. And that's because I had a mirror there to shine back to look at the slides to see what the heck I was supposed to be talking about. But I mean, that was how high tech we were in '89. And I loved it. So it took a couple of colleagues and myself about 6 hours to landscape that stage, in case anybody's adding up hours in prep. But we had 300 square foot of sod and 20-foot trees, and people were cringing, what is this woman doing? But it was fun. I welcomed it. I was so happy when they renamed it. I want a new plaque. I want that name on my plaque. But this man is still my idol, my standards of excellence and integrity. This is the man who set the bar when we got here. And I still use, Brooke, I still use those standards today for myself and my students and even my kids. So I want to thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. Let me get my feet. I'm Sally Heath. I taught physics for 35 years as part of the engineering/physics department, which unfortunately is no more. My lecture was on the physics of the clarinet, and there were some low-tech aspects to the demonstrations I did, and some high-tech, about as high-tech as you could get in those days. Low-tech, I shook a spring up and down like this that was stretched across the stage in order to make some standing waves. High-tech, I had a dancing waveform on the screen, all the way across the screen, the big screen, as I played the clarinet. And to do that, we had a microphone connected to an oscilloscope, a black and white TV camera then on the oscilloscope. That camera fed to a special high-intensity black and white TV, and then finally a big concave mirror to project that on the screen. And that was really high-tech in those days. Today, probably your smartphone app, wireless, and a smart projector or something would do it. Now, to Brooke. I am thinking, Brooke, that I have never completely thanked you for a letter you wrote to me in the spring of 1966. Do you have any idea what that letter was about? I started teaching when I was really young, and at that time I had absolutely no idea of where I wanted to be living. I had a lot of confusion about what I wanted to be doing in the years down the line. But in the spring of '66, things kind of came together for me. And I decided that I wanted to live in Northern California and teach in a community college. Now, I found that there were 2 or 3 jobs available in the Bay Area, but that was more urban setting than I wanted to be in. So I wrote a letter to Santa Rosa Junior College and a couple other schools, somewhat removed from the Bay Area, asking if they might have a physics opening for that fall of '66. Now, I don't remember whether the other schools just did not respond or sent me a negative response, but Brooke wrote me a letter, as sort of an informal note, but not on yellow paper, a handwritten, and in it he said that there was no opening for the fall of '66, but there was a retirement coming up, and there would be a job in the fall of '67. So spring of '67, I got my application in, and the rest is history. Now, it might be, Brooke, had you not written that letter, that I might have been continuing my search that next spring, found the JC had an opening, applied, and history would have been the same. But it also might have been that things would not have been the same and I would not have appeared in Santa Rosa. So, Brooke, a big thank you for your contribution to my being here today. Thanks.
I'm George Freund. I taught in the philosophy department, although, like Sally's situation, my department doesn't exist as a philosophy department now. It's a name that I can neither remember nor pronounce, so I just say that I'm from the philosophy department. I gave my talk at a time when it was still called the faculty keynote lecture, and I don't know if Diane fully took credit for this, but Diane was the one who really proposed that this become the Tauzer lecture, and I think we all just thought that was an inspired idea. And a few things about Brooke. Like PJ, I remember going to the graduation ceremonies, and just it was wonderful to listen to Brooke. He had this intense pride in SRJC, and he just made you incredibly proud to be a part of it. And the other thing that Brooke had, and I've had wonderful experiences working with administrators since Brooke, but the combination of that pride in the JC and the kind of wisdom that this man had, that is really, truly rare. And I remember being a part of a number of different interview committees in which faculty were a part of interviewing administrators that were coming in. And my criterion was, I didn't have a list of criteria. I had an image of Brooke in my mind. And when I would think of a person and a person being qualified for this position, I would just think of Brooke. He was sort of my, forgive me, platonic ideal of being an administrator. So I wanted to thank Brooke for the dedication to the college, the loyalty to the college, your passionate devotion to students and faculty, and also for helping me understand that Plato's ideals can actually be exemplified in real life. I would be passing this on to my dear friend and colleague Jerry Waxman, but he's not with us and is watching us right now, I'm sure.
Thank you. My name is John Nelson. I have taught in the music department. My lecture was What Can You Really Hear in Music, which you can hear a lot of things whether you know anything about music or not. I was hired by Brooke over the telephone. I was standing outside in one of those telephone kiosks, you know, and it was pouring down rain in the middle of the Rocky Mountains in Topanos, Colorado. And Brooke said, well, you've got the job. You are to be in the classroom September the 3rd. And if you're not in that classroom, both your and my, and he didn't even say Bob, gluteus maximus, will be in great trouble. And I said, Brooke, I will be there. I was there. And all I can say about Brooke is he's real. There's nothing fake about him. And my wish would be that all of our colleagues, I don't care where they are, could have had the experience of working with this man, because he has a coruscating, sesquipedalian oratory. He is absolutely unparalleled. And you know something, Brooke? You're a people person, and boy, does that make a difference. Mille grazie.
Well, my lecture was in 1994, the year that I proposed that the Senate send it up to the administration, etc., that we call this the Tauzer Lecture. And my title was Courtship and Marriage in an Anthropological Perspective, which means I got to talk about multiple wives, multiple husbands, just really scratch through everything that people think is normal about coupling up. And it was fun. And I'm just going to add one little brief story that I love, because I cut my teeth in the Senate because Bob Rubin put me on a committee, the one to save departments from becoming divisions. And then when I became a department chair, I cut my teeth with Brooke in the department chair committee, and he tolerated all of the old timers and all of the newcomers beautifully. And I remember being at one of the first meetings of the department chair group, and he was talking about something that I found absolutely compelling, because it would make the school so much better. And I could get behind that, and yes, let's really do this and get into it. And Ruth Craig, the French teacher, some of us remember Ruth, she stood up in her brown professional suit and said, and she was really flushed in the face, and she said, people, stop. We've done all this before. And I said, without even thinking, no, we haven't. It's really interesting. And Brooke, you continued. And whatever the idea was, I forget, but you took us generation after generation, or season after season, and helped us run the school with a lot of good steerage from you. Thank you.
Bruce MacPherson, Business Administration and Social Science. 1995, gave a talk on ecological economics. Turned out it was the third one of that same subject that I had given in my 39 years at the junior college. Let me tell you something about Brooke that I don't think many would remember. There was, before this lecture series, one that preceded it. I think it was in mid-60s that a philosophy instructor by the name of Bud Gump, do you remember that name? Came up with the proposal for there to be a faculty lecture series. 4 instructors would be selected each year. 2 in the fall would speak, and 2 in the spring. And I guess that lasted about, 12, 14 years or so, and I don't know exactly how it died, but it did. But in the year 1976, the bicentennial year, 4 people were selected to speak, and I was one of those, and so was Brooke. 10 members of the faculty were asked to submit a paper on the bicentennial and how it related to their research topics or their scholarly interests. And those were gathered up and published by Don Emblin after the fourth of the lectures was given. all of this is to say that one of those lecturers was Brooke Tauzer. So as Diane had suggested that we all went through the nervousness and the sweats of getting ready to give a lecture, Brooke did too. So he is one of us in more ways than have already been mentioned. 1976, and it was Jack London. Centennial. Yes, for the bicentennial. That's right. Then I had the good fortune of 10 years on college council working with Brooke, and those were memorable indeed, and I thank you.
Excuse me. Thank you. I think we all should thank Russ Bowden one more time, because when I started my lecture, I didn't know what AV represented. And until I started gotten into it, I don't think anybody here would have such a dynamic venture as dealing with the audiovisual department. So I'd like to thank Russ once again. My name is Byron Cricket, and I'm from the former Department of Dance and Physical Education and Athletics, now called the Kinesiology Department, very academic. In 1996, I was asked to do this lecture, and who approached me but PJ and Bob Rubin. And talking about being honored to be asked, but the daunting standards that had been set was rather intimidating. And my first response to them was, no, hell no, and then it convinced later on. But the topic was the non-discriminatory nature of injury, the trainer's role. And for those who recall, the highlight for me was the physical abuse we were able to extend to administration with Ed Buckley and Rich Rose. And the other was I had a picture of Ed Buckley in the training room. But the legendary Brooke Tauzer was also one of those non-discriminatory athletes. And that he too came into the training room, if I recall, Brooke, and fell asleep. So I guess the job well done. Anytime we try to get a meeting, and testimony to this meeting today and for Brooke is the attendance that we have. I think if you look back and trying to organize a get-together is very, very difficult. But I think having a great topic, you get great results. Brooke is synonymous with SRJC. To me, Brooke has been an icon and a true ambassador to the school. He has been an inspiration as a man, an educator, administrator, and lecturer. I was in awe when I heard Brooke lecture because he had a magic with words. And like I said, when I was honored to do this and was asked to do it, it was with hesitation because of the standards that were set. So with this, I say, a friend indeed, and to the man who gave me the nod and hired me in '71, thank you, Brooke.
Hi, everyone. I'm John Martin from the math department. And I think the math department will probably be around for many hundreds of years. We'll be a math department. Maybe not, though. You never know. The title of my talk was The Pythagorean Proposition and the Enduring Beauty of Mathematics. And I thought, once that title gets out, no one will come to the lecture. But they must have shown up without reading the title in advance, so that was good. I really miss having Brooke introduce new faculty at the beginning of each year. Those of us that heard that and his way of making each person feel like they were the best lecturer, the best student, the best teacher in the world. And he did that for me, and that was a special feeling. When I was hired to teach full-time at Santa Rosa Junior College, I was told that I needed to be interviewed by Dean Tauzer. I said, that's fine. And on the day that I had my interview, I realized I didn't know whether Dean was his first name or his title. I also didn't know whether he was a doctor or a mister. And as I walked across the campus, I saw there was a building named after him. So I learned later, of course, that it was named in honor of his father, but I was intimidated. And my question to Brooke was, "How should I address you, sir?" He said, "You should call me Brooke." And at that point, I knew that I was going to enjoy working for this man. And I'd just like to say thank you, Brooke, for your kind and gentle spirit and your warm and welcoming personality. You made this place as it is today. Thank you.
My name's Sarah Gill, and I worked for the art department for many, many years. And the topic for the Tauzer lecture was how to enjoy, it was something like this, how to enjoy art, how to respond to art in different ways. What I mostly remember about that lecture now is that I called for volunteers. And one of them who volunteered somewhat unwillingly was our former president here. And I remember him volunteering his comments on a picture by Picasso, which featured many, many nudes. It was an interesting lecture. I remember Brooke hiring me, and I remember Brooke as being the real humanist in Bailey Hall, and I thank you for that. It was a wonderful experience to be working with you. And just a little, just to bring it up to date, Brooke came to me today and it's so like him. He said, my son Charlie still talks about the course that he had from you. I thought that was just, so Brooke.
I'm Jim Burke, Business Administration. 1999 was my presentation, dealing with targeting students and how to respond to the different diverse student populations that were coming to the community college. My comment about Brooke is not related to the college. In 1977, my daughter worked part-time at the rectory at St. Rose Parish, and we had just lived in Santa Rosa for a year. Brooke hired me in 1976. And one evening when I went to pick my daughter up, she was an 8th grade student, she was telling me about these gentlemen that would come to the door of the rectory looking for a place to sleep for the night. And I was taken a bit aback, but my thought was, well, what would you do? And she says, well, I was told to call this man on the telephone and that he would come down and he would find a place for these gentlemen to sleep for the night. And I thought that was really interesting. I said, what was his name? And she says, it was Mr. Tauzer. And Brooke, I've never forgotten that experience. I felt so proud at that time to be associated with you. So thank you.
Thank you. My name is Ida Egley. I'm from the English department. And I was 2000, and my presentation was Mark Twain, Dead, Never, California's Cosmopolitan Literature. So it was a fun lecture, and one of the reasons I agreed to do it, truthfully, was because of Brooke. I felt that it was an honor, and all of these wonderful people had gone before me. So it was partly the company I was going to be keeping, but it was also about Brooke. And what I want to say about Brooke is some of the best evenings of my life were at his house with Gloria and Jack McCune and Jim Churchill and a whole group of other people talking until midnight or 1 o'clock about music or art or history or whatever was going on. They were fascinating, wonderful, wonderful evenings. And the last thing I want to say about Brooke is that through the years, especially when I was chair of the English department, walking across campus, running into an administrator, I'd have to straighten the shoulders, get ready, what am I going to say, that kind of thing. But when I saw Brooke, I realized that in my head, I didn't go through any of that. There was no glitch. There was no, what do I say? There was always a warm hand across there. And my husband, Gus P. Manolis, and I both felt that there was something indeed really, really special about Brooke. But it was that human touch that he maybe didn't know, but that glitch didn't happen in the head. It was great. Thank you, Brooke.
I'm Cindy Reese. In 2003, I was the Tauzer lecturer. When I was thinking about what department was I in, gosh, was it business data processing or computer and information sciences or computer studies? So, Brooke, it was just one of those departments. My presentation was entitled A Computer Odyssey, Where is Hal? Like many of you in the audience, I gave that presentation at least 100 times before I stepped on the podium, always to my little Boston Terrier in my kitchen, who would get a cookie when she went through the entire presentation. She was a fat little dog by the time that the presentation was done. Many years later, when I retired from JC, I cleared out a really cluttered office, and I consolidated it all down to a little shoebox. And in that shoebox, was my note from you: be proud of an enviable record, an eloquent and personal note that I kept, because what you always reminded me of was the fact that when you're an educator, it is your job to impart knowledge and skills to your students, but that can always be augmented with a personal touch. And for that, I thank you.
Hi, my name is Peggy Goebel, and I represent Health Sciences, and I was the first representative of Health Sciences, so I was very proud of that. And my lecture followed Cindy, and one of the biggest things I can remember about being asked to be this lecturer is, and I think Ida called me, and I think I said, "You're kidding." You're kidding. And then I had this long, pregnant pause. And like so many of the rest of you, the fact that it was in your name, Brooke, really helped me make the decision to accept what turned out to be quite a daunting task. The name of my lecture was Hold Hands, Take a Deep Breath, and Push. And it was about, and I was so sorry you weren't in the audience. I asked, is Brooke going to be here, please? Because Brooke also hired me. Brooke and Charlie Tauzer, Charlie Belden were the two people that hired me back in 1976. And I've taught until this spring 38 years here at Santa Rosa Junior College. So I was one of the youngest to be on the top of the seniority list. So I was very proud of that, and that was started by Brooke. I actually had a birth at the end of my presentation, and it was all about life and birth, and I had asked members of the college community to send me pictures of their babies and their birthings, and it was quite personal. And I started where Cindy ended off with the 2001 fetus floating through space. and picked right up on that and carried through. At the end, I had an emergency delivery at the mall during an earthquake, and Karen was our mom, and she was exquisite. And she was delivered by Greg Granderson and Janet McCullough and a whole group of people that attended her emergency birth after she spilled a quart of water on the floor, and appropriately was doing all the wonderful things. And as the birthing happened, and Russ, in his magic, turned the lights down, we brought a newborn in from the stage, and Karen got to hold that newborn in her arms. And it reminded me full circle of life at this junior college, the life that you have so much impressed upon us, Brooke. Not only are you a gentleman, you're articulate, you're compassionate, you're warm, you're human. You're everything all of us would love every administrator in the world to be. You're our role model. You're our ideal. If we called you with a question or a problem, 5 minutes later, like Bob and PJ said, you were sitting in our office next to our desk, asking us how you could help us. And we didn't have to wait 2 and 3 weeks to get an appointment with an administrator. You were right there. And if you could solve it, you would. And most of the time you did. You were just the biggest role model that so many of us could have. And I was just not a brand new nurse, but a very young nurse. And you were warm and compassionate and understanding and encouraging. And a people person doesn't even start to say your wonderful people skills that you have shared, and your love and your kindness and your dedication. You are absolutely amazing. And for that, I thank you. And I also have to pull in for Russ here, because without Russ, I don't know about the rest of you, but he became my new best friend during this. He made it happen, and I thank you. I thank you, Brooke. We love you.
I'm Bennett Friedman from the music department, and I gave my presentation in '05. It's the jazz experience. I was, as we all were, extremely helped by Russ Bowden, and I was helped very much by 3 of my students that performed with me. Just to say in passing that one of them was just on the Grammys performing, a bass player. But they were great students. And anyway, I just wanted to say about meeting Brooke. And I found the job description in my box, my faculty box at Foothill College where I was, and seemed like a good match. And then the contact person, you were supposed to, and if I remember something wrong, I'm sorry. That's just the way I remember it. I'm not sure I have it exactly right. But I think it's respond to Brooke Tauzer. I don't think it said Mr. Dr. Dean, what job he had. I think it just said the name, and I didn't know. And even when I came up to the JC and really basically spoke to Dan Goulart, and you know the hiring process was less formal those days, right? And then I remember being in a room in an office with Brooke, and I guess it was an interview. I'm not quite sure really, but he was talking to me like we were old friends, and I didn't know what to make of it. And one particular expression, which I won't say here, but it was he was talking about the tenure review process, which was also less formal than it is now. But he used certain terminology, earthy terminology, I'll say, and it was like we were drinking buddies or something. And I just met him, and then not too long after that, and I pile on what John just said, his introductions to faculty, and hearing him eloquently speak about each of us. And when he said, speaking of me, clarinetist, I'll never forget it. So, sorry. Shouldn't have had. But I was happy to get the job. I wanted a full-time teaching job. I was an instrumentalist player, and to me it was great. I got the job. I was happy. But after meeting Brooke and hearing him, it just he was extraordinary, and it showed me that this is an extraordinary place, and you all are.
I'm Mary Pierce. I teach in the Communication Studies Department, and I may be the first of us to be a Tauzerian who was hired after your time here, Brooke. So you're sort of your kind of mythological status for me. My lecture was on listening to the silent language, is what I called it, and it was about nonverbal communication. And I was the first Tauzerian from the Petaluma campus, which is where I've spent most of my teaching career here, down in Petaluma. And at that time, a lot of people in the district didn't even know how to find the Petaluma campus. So I spent a lot of time in my lecture working in things so that people might be able to locate the campus and come visit us down in Petaluma. So I worked with Russ and Russ's staff to videotape people giving directions how to get to the Petaluma campus, and so their hand gestures and nonverbal communication became part of the examples of my lecture. And maybe more people have come down to Petaluma as a result of that. So I just want to say how honored I have always been to be a Tauzerian. I can't tell you, it's the supreme moment in my teaching career. I was so floored when Cindy called me. I was teaching abroad in Florence when you sent me the little note, and I didn't actually believe you for a couple of days. But we really, all of us, whether we worked with you or not, I think, try, when we choose the next Tauzerian, to honor teaching in its most purest form. And that's how I see this presentation, and that's what it means to me, that this is the one thing in the district that we do that without a lot of committee, paperwork, it's just pure honoring teaching. And thank you for inspiring us.
So we're skipping Scott Fuller, right? Yeah. I'll do Scott's part, no. I'm Leslie McCauley, and I'm from Theater Arts. And I was hired after your time, and I didn't know you. And I have to say, this has been overwhelming for me today. I'm so honored to be sitting here with all of you who came before and who are to come. And what an amazing man you are. And I've learned a lot from you about being a leader today, so thank you so much. My talk was in 2008, and it was, I had watched Scott Fuller's, and I was sitting out there thinking, man, I could never do this. That's exactly what I thought, and right after that, I got the call, and I thought, well, no, we're just a bunch of eccentrics, flouncing around in tutus over here. I can't do that. And so for my lecture, I had people flouncing around in tutus. No, they weren't. They were flouncing around, though, in costumes. It was fops, fakes, and rakes, the fabulous world of 17th century British Restoration comedy. And I had Eric Thompson out there with a handkerchief and people fan flipping and all that. And Peggy, I want you to know, during yours, you were showing a cartoon about the reproductive system. I got nauseous and I had to leave the room. That's how overwhelmed I was. And so I came back and I experienced the rest of your Tauzer lecture laying on the floor in the back of Burbank Auditorium. Anyway, thank you so much.
Andre LaRue, Social Science Department, and I had the sad misfortune of having to follow Leslie McCauley doing my Tauzer, but to try and settle down and take care of the knots in my stomach that I carried for about a year. I think I had a conversation with my colleague Jack Wegman, and he reassured me. He said, "Don't worry about it. I mean, if you're great, that's going to look really good for the social science department, and if you stink, then the rest of us are off the hook." And so I said, "Thank you, Jack. I feel much better now." Yeah. But I agree with Leslie. It was just one of the real honor of my teaching career to be able to be asked to be a Tauzer lecturer. And it was something that, with all the nervousness and whatnot, I thoroughly dedicated myself to, and I thoroughly enjoyed, and I thoroughly, particularly felt good by all of the support that I got from all the people that I talked to in preparation for it, who were so supportive. So I feel I really feel like it was a collaborative effort. And unfortunately, I did start too late to be able to get one of Brooks' notes. And I have always regretted that, because whenever his name came up, it was always with respect and it was always with love. So thank you so much for the inspiration that you continue to give. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Michael Salinger. I'm a chef, and I'm in the Culinary Arts Department. I, too, was hired after Brooks' tenure, and what I can say is the groundwork that was laid at this college during your tenure made everything possible that I've experienced while I've been here. It's been a remarkable experience. I came to the college in 1991 as an adjunct after being a chef for a number of years and going through an injury. Teaching was something that never, ever occurred to me that I would do in my life. And I had the opportunity of being in the right place at the right time, which is SRJC. SRJC is 3 minutes from my home, and I was recuperating from a back injury. I came to SRJC to investigate the culinary program, met with Harriet Lewis, who was my department chair at the time, and everything fell into place. So my lecture was on what's cooking. As a chef, there was no way I was going to do a lecture without building a kitchen on the stage. I found out partway through the year leading up to my lecture that mine would be the first lecture at the Petaluma campus. The stage at Petaluma campus is maybe, what, Russ, about a quarter the size of here? And so we, had some logistical problems, and like many of you, Russ came to the rescue so many times, was so responsible for making what I did look great on the stage, and it was a fantastic experience for me. I thank all of you that came before me. When I got the call from Andre, my reaction was, do I have to answer right now? I was scared. I was like, really? And I had thought about this before. Like Leslie, I'm sitting in my chair in the audience watching the rest of you give your lectures, thinking, if anyone ever asked me, what would I do? How could I possibly do this? And so I immediately called my wife, and we talked for about 30 seconds and came to the decision, of course I have to do this. And I called Andre back right away, and I said, yes, I'll do this. How could I not? And looking back at my experience giving my lecture and the work that led up to it, it was one of the most remarkable experiences of my life. I think it's something that I'm very, very proud of all the things that I've done here at the college. And Karen, you're going to have a great time doing it. Thank you.
Microphone, thank you. Eric Thompson, I'm also in the post-Brooke camp. I'm in the department that George will not name. We are the Interdisciplinary Studies Department in Philosophy, Humanities, and Religion, and I'm the religion. I teach religion. I'm primarily a Bible scholar by training, and I was the speaker in 2011. My talk was titled Myth Matters, Eve, the original sinner or the original critical thinker? And my burden was to critically analyze the myth of Eve and its effects, and talk about myth in general and the Bible in general and things like that. So until today, Mary stole my line. Until today, I thought Brooke Tauzer was a myth. And so I really appreciate he came up and introduced himself to me as we were all burning out by the picture taking place. And I feel very privileged to be a member of this group, and I feel like a little twig at the top of a majestic redwood. I feel like I now know and now understand the connections that go all the way down to the roots. And I appreciate very deeply the name on my plaque, which adorns my office wall. And now I always got it, but in a very distant and fuzzy mythical sense. And now it's concrete for me. And I really appreciate knowing that. Thank you.
I'm Galen George, chemistry department. My talk was in 2012, following Eric's. Title was "What in the World is Chemistry? A Molecular Odyssey." I kind of stole that from Cindy. I had to watch yours to make sure that I didn't overlap too much, but that was not a problem. My favorite story of Brooke, I was hired by Brooke, and I won't go into the details of how I got this job, but it's a pretty convoluted, long story. But back then, in chemistry at least, you gave a lecture to a real class, then you had an interview with the department. And my lecture went fine, but my interview with the department didn't go that well. In fact, I came out of that interview thinking, I just drove 11 hours for nothing. And so I went out to the car. My wife was waiting for me. She was waiting patiently. We'd driven up from San Diego. I told her, well, I've got another interview, but it doesn't matter. So we went to lunch, came back after lunch. It was all compressed into one day. And walked into Roy Michelson's office, and Brooke and Ed Buckley and Roy were there. And the first question was, why do you want to work at a community college? And my response was, well, I'm in it for the money. And there was this pause, and I thought, oh my God, I really am not going to get this job. And Brooke started laughing. And then Ed started laughing. And then Roy Michelson started laughing. And I realized that this might work. This just might work. And then after that, as several of you have mentioned, it was a conversation. It wasn't an interview. It was a conversation, and they made me feel at ease. I still didn't think I was going to get the job, but I did. I'm here, and I'm thrilled and honored.
He does that to you.
Yeah, he does. He does. Honored to have your name associated with me.
My name is Jack Wegman. I was the 2013 Tauzer speaker. And the title of my presentation was Finding Values, Prices, and Happiness in the Dismal Science. And coincidentally, that day, Brooke, it was Valentine's Day, February 14th, 2013. So by some stroke of luck, I had Valentine's Day and happiness as my topic. My introduction to Brooke occurred almost 35 years ago, and I'd like to just tell you a little story about it. It's actually my favorite story. I was teaching at Santa Monica College. I was a part-time instructor and had been invited to come up to Santa Rosa Junior College to interview for an economics teaching position. And I decided that I would drive my 1972 Volkswagen bus up along Highway 101 because I had never been north of San Francisco. So I decided, I was 28 years old, I decided to see what things look like north of San Francisco. I didn't actually know there was anything north of San Francisco. And I remember coming along 101, and there was a sign, College Avenue, Santa Rosa Junior College, and I got off at the off-ramp and went down Mendocino Avenue and parked at the Bailey Field lot. Santa Monica College is a standard two-year college in Southern California, which is primarily glass and stucco. So when you park at the Bailey Field lot, and the first building you run into is Burbank Auditorium and then Garcia Hall, and you notice that these are red brick buildings with ivy on them, I knew that there was something different about this place. There was just something off. And I went to my job interview, and just to show you what this place was like for me at 28 years old, on my committee, I can only give you the names of people who you may remember. John Crivelli, whose degree was from Cal, Jack McCune, who studied at Oxford and his degree was at the Sorbonne. Ron Scholke was my peer in economics. I had a fellow named Terry Curtis whose degree was in political science and his law degree was from the University of Chicago. And then I had a department chair named Clifford Hodder whose expertise was in Japanese history. And we were having this wonderful interview and the interview was over and I wanted this job very badly. And so in the beginning, I just said, I want to teach here very badly, and I hope that you will not hold it against me that I have 2 bachelor's degrees and 2 master's degrees, and I'm all but dissertation, and that will not put me out of your market price. Because after all, I am an economist. And and there was this man sitting in the corner who had not said one word during this discussion. He just sat there, and I noticed he was sitting there, but he didn't talk. And then he spoke, and it was as if listening to Cecil B. DeMille at the beginning of the movie The 10 Commandments. This booming voice. It was like the Wizard of Oz. And this booming voice said to me, Mr. Wegman, we hire the best faculty at this school that money can buy. And then he said, would you come outside with me for a moment? And I said, yeah, sure. And he said, welcome aboard. Welcome to Santa Rosa Junior College. Brooke, next to my family, teaching at this school has been the most important part of my life. And so I want to thank you for giving me that opportunity. So.
Well, I'm Terry Fronja from the Department of Modern and Classical Languages and American Sign Language. We've undergone a little reorg as well. And I was the 2014 Tauzer lecturer, and the topic was The Art of Being Human, Italian Style. And I must say, in all my experience, I've never heard so much humanity in one place at one time as in this room right now. And I'm getting chills. I was floored, and Jack can tell you, I was absolutely speechless because I thought he was hunting me down as a former dean to be on a committee as a faculty member, and I literally could not hear him when he said, we have selected you to be the next Tauzer lecturer. And then I thought, there must be a mistake. I was a dean not too long ago, and now I'm being honored as a faculty member with a group that is absolutely phenomenal and scary as all get out to follow. Unfortunately, I did not arrive here during the Tauzer years, and I'm very, very much am sorry about that because I think that is a wonderful fit and what education needs to be now more than ever. However, the reputation of Santa Rosa JC was well known to me when I was at the University of California in Riverside in 1997, when I left it to move to actually your competitor, College of Marin. I was offered a deanship there, and I together because I was the very first manager of distance learning at UC Riverside, the first one in the whole UC system. And so I already knew the reputation, and I went to College of Marin, and within 3 years figured that's not where I want to be. The job opened here, and I came, and it has been one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. Okay, so I wanted to thank all of you, SRJC, for being the extremely special place you are, and I hope we keep that legacy of excellence. And thank you, Tauzer, Brooke, for having developed that. And I wanted to thank also Karen for having this phenomenal idea of recognizing the roots and the foundation of what the JC is and who we are as educators and human beings. Thank you so much, all of you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Karen Stanley, and I'm in kinesiology, athletics, and dance. My Tauzer is in the spring of 2015, exactly 5 months from today. Not like I'm counting or anything. I'm through the sleepless nights where I wake up in panics. Those are finally over. So I guess I'm the only one here who is not an official Tauzerian yet. I will be soon. And I had the same experience that Terry did. I do remember for 19 years sitting through Tauzer lectures being in awe and never, ever, ever, ever thinking that I would be on the other side of that. Ever. It never even crossed my mind. So when Terry came to visit me and we went over 20 scenarios why she could possibly be there, and then finally I passed out, and I think it was 30 minutes before I woke up. It was that moment where, yeah, it hit me. So anyway, I'm honored because I'm in this room of these amazing people, and it's an honor to be even considered and included in your group. So thank you so much. I can't tell you the title of my topic because even though I have it, I'd have to kill you all if I told you because it has to be a secret. So you won't find out till next February. So I did not have the honor to work with and for Brooke. I heard his name for all my years since I've been at the college. I work in Tauzer building. Of course, know so many great things about Brooke, and it's been my pleasure, my tremendous pleasure in the last 5 years to get to know Brooke as a friend, Brooke and Alicia. And so especially an honor when I was selected to be able to know that it was all, for Brooke and in Brooke's name. So Brooke, I wanted to thank you for being such a wonderful friend, you and Alicia, for being such kind and caring people. And even though I didn't have the privilege to be at the college when you were working there, I know from what I've heard today and heard for the last 19 years, for the leadership and the experience, the wisdom, your vision, your inspiration, and your legacy. I just profoundly thank you for that. So thank you so much, Brooke. Switching hats here. Okay, so we are going to end today appropriately for our guest of honor who would like to give some closing remarks. So please, for Brooke.
And thank you, Karen, for the introduction, and congratulations on arranging this happy event. I can personally testify that Karen's preparation assures another treat come February. Yes? Yes. Not January. February. Okay. I'm most grateful to, and you'll please excuse me, I am going to continue to sit down because I have to. Because of what you have said and because of a bad back. I am most grateful to all of you for your memorable personal comments, and I'm certainly impressed by the participation. Yet I'm not surprised because you are a group of gifted educators possessed of a dedicated sense of campus community. Michael, kudos to you for presiding over another culinary delight. It was in August that a table of us, including Karen, we were so excited about the soup that we took home nearly half a gallon. And Russ, grateful to you for your expertise in recording today for the archives. Media Services has realized finally at SRJC because of you, its full potential. And on adjournment today, I want to share with you a story, just you and me, about the availability of audio-visual services in 1955, which is when I joined the faculty. Today's focus is a faculty reunion of accomplished lecturers dating from 1987, then in the person of Bob Rubin. And I want to snapshot the faculty, you, documented and undocumented, for just a very few moments. It is September of 1946, a monumental year in higher education in America. World War II had just concluded, and 7 million were discharged in 1 year. And so we are in September then of 1946. Congress had passed the GI Bill of Rights. It had an educational component. And when that expired, the state stepped in and augmented. Campuses across the nation were absolutely congested. It was so bad at UC Berkeley that some friends of mine matriculated a dog. And this was a fox terrier that shared with students space at Sproul Plaza. It was a well cared for and loved animal, and for 2 semesters, I kid you not, it happened, for 2 semesters, that dog posted a 2.7 GPA. It was eventually, the sham was eventually discovered. So September of 1946, I had just got out of the service, my friends had, they came to Santa Rosa Junior College. Scores of them. And if you added the acquaintance, it was hundreds of them. And I developed, because of their reaction, an appreciation of faculty. Because rave reports were received on the instruction. I heard about Margaret Clark in English, Florence Rodhamel in philosophy, George Andreini in speech and theater arts, Betty Lynn Scott and Cook Cipher in physical education, Milo Baker in botany, Charlie Hitchens, as John and I talked about, Charlie Hitchens in mathematics, Marion Whitney in history, Sid Patzer in political science. At the same time that my pals were enrolled at SRJC, my father greased the skids and I entered Stanford. He enjoyed the GI Bill of Rights coming out of World War I, and I took him through law school. So long before this September of 1946, my application had been submitted way back in April. I visited the admissions office down there in May. So everything was in reasonable order. Okay. My English teacher, a TA, first time in the classroom, very abrupt and impatient. Everybody took Western civilization in their freshman year. My instructor, a TA, first time in the classroom, terribly forgetful. Most of us who were destined to have a major in the liberal arts for our laboratory science took biology. Biology. 2 lectures and a 3-hour lab weekly for 3 units. I had a TA in English. I had a TA in Western Civ, and there weren't enough teaching assistants in biology to offer the laboratory. The net result of which was we were given credit for the laboratory because they added 1 lecture, and so there was the 3 units. The comparison, you understand, is phenomenal. I would also point out for emphasis that Margaret Clark, Florence Rodhamel, Milo Baker, Charlie Henchins, and Marion Whitney, in 1946, when my friends were enrolled, had been members of the faculty of Santa Rosa Junior College since 1930. They had 16 years under their belts. I had TAs. And that formed a very lasting impression. Within 10 years, I was appointed to the faculty. Here. So my appreciation for colleagues immediately converted to respect, then to admiration, and then to the several degrees thereof. If I were 12 years old, I would say that the faculty with which I taught was awesome. We turned to some documentation. Is there a community college in America whose total history is recorded in bound volumes? My reference in front of me is volume 3 of a 5-volume set. Not incidentally, Ed Buckley is responsible for the most recent edition. Also, commendations to John Martin and his transcriptions on the math department, and to John Crivelli and his recollections now on deposit in an active archives. I want to read a couple of paragraphs about faculty. It's you. Because of its absolute importance, reference is made once again to the specialized faculty role at a community college. Instructors of experience are dedicated to a professional lifetime of teaching freshman and sophomore courses. When that delivery occurs at SRJC, the result is educational quality at its best. No other segment of higher education, that is, the private sector, the University of California, and the California State University systems, can claim priorities, which places it competitively with a community college exemplified by Santa Rosa. Likewise, occupational instructors have a special calling. Experienced practitioners commit to translating and to transferring their expertise, thus perpetuating quality service in the economy. It is the vocational educator who, more than any other single factor, makes the distinction between the traditional junior college and the more contemporary community college. Observing teaching excellence at Santa Rosa Junior College in 1984 was Pat Callan, Executive Director of California's Post-Secondary Educational Commission, CPEC. He was escorted around the campus, visiting classrooms at random and receiving instruction in topics as diverse as Beethoven by John Nelson and quantum physics by Sally Heath. For months thereafter, Dr. Callan, in conference meetings and public appearances, referred to his positive and revealing experience at SRJC. The prologue to Volume 3 concludes with this paragraph. A tiny college in 1918 admitted 19 students, all of whom were qualified for matriculation at the University of California. A very large college today admits students by the tens of thousands because of a total commitment to the open door policy. Witness a curriculum and services intended to serve virtually an entire population. So the years pass and change is accommodated. Yet there is a constancy which is exemplified by the excellence that has always characterized instruction, and student support services at Santa Rosa Junior College. It is a quality institution, and thus it will remain. There is a quiet confidence about the mission of this campus. That self-assurance is no more evident than in the name. while sister colleges across the land have chosen to shed or avoid the junior level, Santa Rosa retains it with conviction. It is a statement of history dating back to 1918. Santa Rosa Junior College is a very special place indeed. That is because of you. Thank you.